My name is Reginald Dwayne Betts. I am a poet, the author of a felon. Going to keep telling people. And I'm a lawyer. I went to Yale Law School. I'm also a felon, which is quite strange saying that I'm a graduate of the Yale Law School, but I am. And it's interesting thinking about how all of it happened. I had a teacher who I wasn't close to, but I knew, who I recently learned passed away. I was invited to speak at the University of Rochester, and it happened to be a young woman who was a student at Suitland High School. She graduated from there, and that's the school I went to. And I remember this teacher. I remember the year it happened. This was 1996, and she had this program where it was one of those Student Jeopardy programs, and I wanted to be involved with the Student Jeopardy program. I remember her telling me, "This is not for you." And I had knew her because I was getting in lunch. I was getting in trouble during my classes, and I was having lunch detention basically all throughout 9th grade. And then all throughout 10th grade, I went to her office during lunch anyway, just to sort of escape the stress and the noise and everything else that was going on in the school. And in 10th grade, a friend of mine got murdered, and I didn't know him that well, but I knew him well enough because we met each other through lunch detention. And I remember in 11th grade, I was 16 years old, and she told me that I was going to end up just like Charles, who again got murdered by another teenager. And it's strange the things you remember, and it's strange how you carry the things you remember. After she said that, I probably ended up locked up for carjacking less than 2 months later. And I'm not trying to say that it was her, but I'm trying to say that it was just this opportunity for her to be something different for me. Even if she failed, right? Even if it didn't work out, it was a chance for her to be something different for me, and she wasn't. Held a gun one time, committed a robbery just that night, carjacking, attempted carjacking, December 7th, 1996. Got arrested the next day, pled guilty, confessed soon as I got caught. And I just remember deciding after I got sentenced to 9 years in prison. And carjacking carries life, and so I was facing life, and I got sentenced to 9 years in prison, and I remember deciding that I would be a writer. And it worked out, wrote a few books. And then, years later, came home, wrote a few books, came home, went to college, went to community college, went to the University of Maryland, and found dozens, really, of teachers who said yes to me when the fact that I had 3 felonies and I spent 9 years in prison meant that they could have easily said no and been justified and just pushing me away. Nobody would have questioned them. But I found teacher after teacher, mentor after mentor who said yes. And I've been saying yes to myself for a long time. Basically, from the point that I decided to be a writer without knowing what being a writer meant, I had sort of cultivated the habit of saying that I was going to do and reach and chase and pursue whatever it is that I dreamed of, and that I didn't want to be, I don't even say I didn't want to be a statistic, but I wasn't satisfied with only being a convict. I wasn't satisfied with only having done so much time in prison. So that's what I did. Later, I randomly decided to go to law school. I was having a hard time getting a job, and I figured I would rather be an unemployed Ivy League trained lawyer than an unemployed poet. And plus, it was just stuff I wanted to do with the world. And I thought, what would it mean to be able to say that I went from a criminal defendant to a criminal defense attorney? What would it mean to say that I went from jail to law school? And I did that with no real expectation that I would get into, Harvard, Yale, Columbia. But I applied wanting to get into all those places, and ultimately I was admitted to Yale Law School, Harvard, Columbia, Georgetown, University of Michigan. I was admitted to, 7 of the best law schools in the country after having spent time in some of the most wretched prisons in the country. And it's been a humbling experience, but that is my story, going from jail to Yale.